All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. We left off by the Mishnah. We got to the Mishnah yesterday. So the Mishnah says, Chamisha, we're continuing with what we discussed. Chamisha Chabura Sheshavtu B'Tarklin Echad. There were five groups of people, not five individuals, five groups of people that were staying in a large house, in a mansion over Shabbos. And each one was like divided, like in different areas, different rooms. So if they make it, if let's say this house, this mansion attaches to a chutzner with other houses, so each and every person of the house has to go ahead and join the eruv. In addition to that, even to carry in the house or in the common area in the house, they would need to go ahead and make an eruv, right? But cool, then they have their own entrance. So Beis Shammai says, each one has to make their own eruv, right? And then Beis Hillel eruv echad. And Beis Hillel says, no, even if they can make one eruv, in other words, since they're really part of the same house, the same mansion, right? So therefore, and therefore, one eruv from the house, even though they each have separate entrances into the chutzner, but since they live, it's under the same roof. Therefore, all they need is one person to make an eruv on behalf of the entire house. And however, if they're living in separate rooms or floors, then it appears that they need an eruv for each and every chabura. So each and every group. So we have to understand what is the metzias here. In other words, what is the separation of where Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai argue, or at least Beis Shammai always says everyone needs to make their own eruv, right? Beis Hillel says so if they're living under the mansion, they're all joined as one, unless they're each in chadarim and aliyos. So now we're going to see the Gemara is going to go ahead and now try to understand the metzias of the case, of what case they argue and to what case they all agree. Fine, let's see the Gemara. So the Mishnah is pretty straightforward. Let's see the Gemara now. So Amar Rav Nachman Machloikes b'Mesifas. The Machloikes is talking about Mesifas, right? Mesifas is basically a makeshift temporary wall or divider. But if you have a wall which is 10 tfachim, then we say Divrei Hakol Eruv. That everyone agrees you need eruv. So in other words, we're only talking about the reason why, because the rooms are separated by makeshift dividers, right? Whatever was put in place. But if there's an actual wall, which is 10 tfachim, right? Now just remind you, remember, 10 tfachim does not reach the ceiling, right? Well, some say case that reaches the ceiling. So if there's a wall that's 10 tfachim, everyone agrees that's already considered to be separated, and therefore everyone has to go ahead and join as if they're different members of the chutzner. And he could in some of the different version of Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Nachman af b'masifas machloikes, right? Even in Masifas they're arguing. Notice, not only do they argue in the case of mechitza, now it's even Beis Hillel will say that case of mechitza, that each one has to go ahead and join, right, the eruv themselves. But even in the case of the divider, they're not considered as one. Rather, each and every one have to go ahead and partake. Or even Beis Shammai in that case will say everyone has to do their own, even in the case of a makeshift. Fine. So that was the second version of Rav Nachman, that all cases do they argue. And Pligaba, Reb Chia, and Reb Shimon. Now we have two other shitas, one of Reb Chia, one of Reb Shimon, Berebi. One says the machlokes is we're talking about walls, right? Now earlier we defined walls as up to 10 tefachim. Here we're talking about walls which actually go up to the ceiling. Right, so machitza, that's the machlokes of machitza. Shein magias to the tikra. But if it's a shorter wall, the divra kol erev v'chalachol kol. And then, since it's a separate wall, basically it's like sleeping in one large room, and all the groups are together, and therefore only one eruv is necessary for this mansion as a member of the chutzner. And if Echad Omar, and the other opinion holds what? Amar Machloikes Machitzas, Shein Magias L'Tikra. The Machloikes is if there's walls, actual walls, right? They're permanent walls, they just don't reach the ceiling, right? Then that's the Machloikes. Beis Shammai says each is considered to be 5 different people, and Beis Hillel says no, since they don't reach the ceiling, it's all considered one. Aval Machitzas Magias L'Tikra. But if the walls reach the ceiling, Divrei Kol Tzrichen Erev Kol Chabur V'Chor. Everyone agrees you need an eruv for each and every group. Fine. So in other words, that sounds like even there's separate rooms, right? The question is, okay, I mean, are these rooms just rooms to sleep in? Or is it, sort of like each one has sort of like, their own sink and living quarters? But over here, if it reaches the ceiling, then everyone is considered to be separated. So turn the page, top line. So Meisve Asukasha Rav Yehuda Hasavar. So I guess he was very charif, right? That's what you call him, Rabbi Yehuda Hasavar. Like Nachlu Beishav Beisel Al Mechitzas Hamagias Latigra Shetzarchin Erev L'Cholchul B'Chabura. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai do not argue on mechitzas that reach the ceiling. In other words, according to this, if they reach the ceiling, everyone agrees they're considered to be separate people. Remember, they're separated by walls where they're staying, and they have their own entrance from the mansion. Each one has their own entrance from the mansion to the chutzner. So, of course, if they join the eruv of the chutzner, which is shared with 10 other homes, of course, each and every one has to go ahead and bring their eruv. Aman nechlaku. So, what's the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? And this is a brisa, right? Al mechitzas shein magias atikra, right? They argue on mechitzas that do not reach the ceiling. Beis Shammai says that's considered to be separate enough, and therefore each one needs their own chabura. Beis Hillel, since it doesn't reach the ceiling, right? All you need is one eruv for all of them, and therefore they join in the eruv. Now, so this brisa, we just had 4 opinions, all right? So it appears, Laman Damar Machitza Samagis Atigra Machlaikas Tiyufta. Now, according to the last case we brought, right? Or not the last group we brought, one was Reb Chia, and the other one was Reb Shimon bar Rebbe, and we didn't know which one said which, but one of them said that the Machlaikas was in the case where the walls reach the ceiling, that is a tiyufta, that's a kasha, because here it clearly says if the walls reach the ceiling, then everyone agrees they have to bring their own. Well, and according to the other opinion of that one, who argued with that and said, no, the machlokes is only when the walls do not reach the ceiling. That siyata, that is 100% proof, right? This is basically what the brisa says. If it reaches the ceiling, everyone agrees to separate it. If it doesn't reach the ceiling, that's the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. And lohach lishna. And then, if you recall, we had 2 opinions of Rav Nachman, right? That was what the Gemara started as to when Nachman was talking about a makeshift wall. Right? According to the opinion holds of the machlokes, even in the case of the masifas, this is tiyufta, that's a kashin. Right, and even according to the lashon who said that even according the lashon of the second lashon of Rav Nachman, just said that even in the case of masifas and machlokes, in other words, not only machlokes if there is not only is there machlokes if there is a wall, but even if it was just a temporary structure, right? So let's say it's a kasha in that, right? So the Gemara says no. Amar Lecha. So he says no. Amar Lecha of Nachman. No. So you say like this. So pligi mechitza v'hu adim masifas. In other words, that which he says is machlokes in the mechitza. It's also machlokes in masifas. So if that's the case, why did the brisa say there's a machlokes in the mechitza, right? And the reason why this brisa said, no, it should have said the bigger chiddush, that is a machlokes even in the case of these temporary partitions and not walls. So why did this brisa say even mechitza is a machlokes? To teach you the koach of Beis Hillel. The Beis Hillel say even though they're permanent walls, since these permanent walls do not reach the ceiling, therefore they would say that it's all considered to be like one, and he would still argue with Beis Shammai. So why doesn't the brisa say why doesn't the brisa say, right? Lo nachlu Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, right? That they need eruv. Alma nechlaku al masifas, right? Why did he say they're arguing only on a case of mechitzas that don't reach the ceiling? He should have said they're even arguing in a case of temporary walls, not just walls that don't reach the ceiling. So why do they want to teach the chiddush of Beis Hillel versus the chiddush of Beis Shammai? That even in this case, Beis Shammai would say that temporary structure, they're still even these makeshift walls, they're still considered to be separated. So koach the heter adif, because the koach of heter is adif. Now, as Beis Shammai is being more machmir, to be machmir is not a chiddush, right? So so it's also right. They're considered to be separated. Therefore, each one of these drones. With the koach of Beis Hillel, to say that even in this case, right? Even in the case where there's mechitzas, right? There's permanent walls that just don't reach the ceiling. Even in such a case, they're considered to be separated. And Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav, halacha Rabbi Yehuda Hasavar. The halacha is like this brisa, which said that if it reaches the ceiling, everyone holds it separated. But if it's just makeshift, if it's just walls that don't reach the ceiling, then if the walls don't reach the ceiling, then there's a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. And Amar Rav Nachman.
Hang on. What's the havamina that it shouldn't be an eruv or mechitza for everybody? Is it that everybody's doing their own shvisa? I mean, they're all in the same house.
They're in the same, but since there's they're sleeping in their own area. They're separated, and they have their own separate entrance into the chutzner, and they're trying to join a chutzner with 10 other houses.
So this house that they're in, there's like lots of different exits into the chutzner.
Exactly, right. So they come in. So each one has their own suite that has a separate entrance. And the chutzner. The question is it just one house because one roof, and therefore one person can give an eruv, and therefore everyone's covered? Or do we say that everyone has to give their own? If people don't give their own, then other people, the chutzner, can't carry in unless these people are mavatal their their rishus there. Good question. So says Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Masis Nami. Even if you look at a Mishnah, also sounds like the halacha is like Rav Yehuda Savar. Why? The Tani, it says over there at the end of the case, it says Moedi Bizmash Miktas and Shurim B'Chadar V'Aliyos. Then we said at the end, as I pointed out, it said, but if they each have their own rooms and their own attics, completely separated, then each one needs their own. Now, my Chadar my Aliyos. What's the pshat of Chadar Aliyos? If each one is literal, so pshit, that's obvious. Each one has a full-fledged wall, their own attic, right? The separate rules is obvious. Elav ke'ein chadarm, ke'ein aliyos. Rather, it's like a cheder or aliyah. And what is that? That's with walls. However, that walls don't go all the way to the ceiling. So Shmamina, we see that that's the case of where they. That's the case where they agree that if the walls, right, they what's it called? If the walls reach the ceiling, then they need. But if not, then we said machias tigra. Therefore, we see that we agree in such a case that each person needs their own eruv. And Tana b'medvar murim shamolchinas eruvim l'makom acher. All this we're talking about is we mentioned this. There's 10 other houses where the eruv is being stored in another house. But if the eruv is brought to them, as we'll soon see this concept, also in the next Mishnah, divrei hakol eruv echad lekulan. Everyone holds, since they're under the same roof and the eruv is being stored in their house, therefore that eruv covers everybody. So if it's going in another place, so everybody has to go ahead and mishtate. But since it's going in their house under their roof, therefore, even if they're separated by walls, that would be okay. They're covered because since the eruv is the eruv is being stored in their house. And kaman azla ha. And so who does this go like? The time when the Raisa chamisha gavos eruvan. You have 5 people that collect the eruv. Shemochin as eruv l'makam acher eruv l'kolecha l'kulan. Right? If they take it to another place, yeah.
Sorry, just to ask, is there anything special about the number 5, or is just the example?
No, I think it's a common. Yeah, it's just a common number. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So we say 5 people that collect the eruv. So milchin is eruv and they go to another place. So eruv echalakulan. Everybody needs their own eruv. So Kaman, who is this like? This would be like Beis Hillel, right? This would be like the opinion of Beis Hillel because, right? Because in this case, right, only when they're going to another place, right? Right? But if one second. Right? Only one person can take it for all of them. So that's like Beis Hillel because Beis Shammai require each and every one to do their own. And in some different version, right? We're only talking about when the eruv came to them. And that's about but if they took the eruv somewhere else, each and every one would need there. So therefore, according to this even if they bring it in, right, that's what the machlekes is. So kaman azla. So who does this go like? The Tanya chamisha shegavas eruv and lushal mochmas eruv l'makom acher eruv echad l'kulan. So but if you have a case of 5 people that they collected the eruv and they took it to another place, right? Then only one person can do it. So command will not be like Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, because we hold that if you don't want to, even Beis Hillel would agree in this case that since you're taking it to another place, then you would need each person to go ahead and join in. So therefore, we see that it's almost like a trump card. If it's in your place, right, then it gathers everybody. We're only talking about when it goes to another place. If it goes to another place, then you need everybody to join unless they're all living together. Fine. New Mishnah. So Mishnah says, "Nai Mishnah ha'achin shahayu olchin ashulchan aviha." You have brothers eating at their father's house. We'll soon see what that means in the Gemara, right? Does Rashi point out here? Right. No. fine. So 5 brothers, they eat by their father. However, but they sleep in their own houses. Right. So each one needs their own eruv. They're all joining, right, into a chutzner, right? So they each have separate sleeping quarters, but they eat by their father's house, nevertheless, and they each have their own entrance, nevertheless. They still need to go ahead and each one needs to join their own to the eruv. Therefore, if one of them forgets and he does not make an eruv, he's mevatel b'shus in order for others to be able to go ahead and carry. So Amosai, when is this? Bizman shemaluchines eruva b'malkom acher. When we talk about this, only when they take their eruv to another place. Aval im haya eruv ba'etzlan. But if the eruv is coming to them, right, to the father's house, right? Oh, she'eniman diurn b'chatzer, or there's nobody else, right? There's nobody else in the chatzer. It's just the 5 brothers. Then einan strichel arev. Since they're being supported by the father, that's enough. So in other words, this is like a new level, because on one hand, right, we say that if there's others there, they have to join in the eruv. So it sounds like they would ask their others from carrying. But then on this other hand, it says that if there was nobody else in the chazah, just the 5 of them, they don't ask their one another. So we have to understand why is in the case with others that they would ask their other people, but if it's just themselves, they wouldn't ask their each other. So we have to understand what this balance is in the Mishnah. So first of all, Gemara says, Zak the Gemara, Shmami no makom lina garim. We see it depends, right? Since they all eat together, but we said, no, they're considered separate, right? Because they sleep separated. So it must be that since they, that only it's the place where they sleep, but if they eat together, it's nothing. So Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Mikabli Prashana, it doesn't mean they literally eat. Maybe even eating would make them together, but they don't eat. Rather, the father supports them, right? He has a family business or whatever it is, and then he gives them all money. So since he supports them, therefore, therefore that would be the question of maybe they join, but it's not just the sleeping, it's also the eating they do separated, and the sleeping and the living they do separated. They're just supported by the father, but you say that's not enough to be considered as their not him supporting them is not enough for them to be all under his under his roof or under his house. And Taner Rabbanan Mish Yesh Beis Sharach Sadrim Repes, person has a Beis Shar, is a gatehouse, or a chsadra, right, or a what's it called, like a pavilion, right, or a merpeset, or I guess a balcony, right. So b'chatzer chavero, and it's attached to the chatzer of his friend. Harei ze'ein aiser love. It's not as aser because these are not living quarters. Beis teven, ubeis bakar, beis etzem, beis aitzas. However, right, storehouses and stuff used for animal food and wood and other types of storage, harei ze aiser love. That asers, in other words, that is considered to be living quarters, and I would aser if the person does not join in the eruv. And Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ein aiser makam dira bevad. Not only if it's a makam dira. And Rabbi Yehuda, further on, Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ma'aseh ben Nafcha shehayu lo chamesh chatzers b'usha." So ben Nafcha had 5 chatzeres in Usha. Oba ma'aseh lefnei chamim v'amru, and the ma'aseh came from chamim. And ein aiser ela beis dira bilvad. No, only beis dira aser is not the 5 chatzeres. The Gemara says beis dira, so the aiser has to be, right, a beis dira. Ela ema makom dira doesn't mean beis dira. If it was fit for sleeping, that's not enough. Okay. However, it has to be his makom dira. He has to have his main place where he stays. So therefore, if he has a bunch of summer homes and he only stays in his main home, so therefore, when the other summer homes do not aser the places if he doesn't join in the eruv. And my makom dira, what does that mean? A makom dira? What's the litmus test? So Rav Omar makom pizza, right? He says, no, the place of his bread. Shmuel Omar makom lina, the place where he sleeps. So that's considered to be makom dira, and that's considered where he lives. In order to, if he doesn't join in the eruv, that he would aser the others. All right, we'll stop here. Tomorrow, Mirta Shem, we will continue. Same time at 7:15. Shkoyach, everybody, and sorry I went a little fast. I just got to head out to the airport. So
Safe travels.
thank you very much.
Rebbe.
All right, we'll see you guys. Thank you very much.
Mazel tov,
Thank you.
mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
All right, bye-bye.